Really? It's this dark? Oh, okay. Darn it. Hi, guys. I was trying to hook up my camera that would make everything a little bit brighter because I'm doing it downstairs today, so Molly can be involved. And she might get involved. She might try to answer some of your questions. It's kind of a bummer that the camera isn't working, but whatever. So it's going to be a little bit darker today. Can you guys hear me? Yay, Molly. Yes, I just tried to tire her out a little bit. You guys can hear me good. Well, I was trying to be all techie. So I do have this microphone. So hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better because I am downloading it and re-uploading just the audio so people can listen to it, but I'm not using any like nice microphone. So hopefully it will be a little bit better today. And I'm going to take down the camera. This is just it just makes things a little bit nicer, but it's like totally not, it's just not working. I'll figure it out for next week. Great. It's Molly with a Y because she's named after Molly Weasley from the Harry Potter books. So everyone can hear me. Everyone's saying hello. We have 9 people live right now. And so let's do what we usually do. Again, for everyone watching the replay, this is for the 3rd week, which is the second part of going through the first part. It's the 2nd week that we are spending on the physical part of the book, where we actually talk about eating food, eating more food, our fears around food. And we also talk, and by we, I mean me, but we are all talking about it, rest, which is the flip side of under eating, is over exercising, over productivity, and it can also put us into a really stressed out state. Or it can also, if we're eating what seems like a normal amount of food, of course, always in quotes, but we're over exercising, which again is something that our culture really encourages and doesn't seem to realize how disordered it is and how very quickly it becomes disordered for us. That's going to do the same sort of thing to our metabolism and to our appetite. We're going to be starving and we're expending more than we're eating, essentially. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. I'm going to be taking all of your questions about that. I'm going to try to make this brighter. I don't have that. I have a very dark house, so that's why I usually do it upstairs, because it's brighter upstairs. We're going to be talking about everything that you've read, and I'm also going to be taking questions for anything that has to do with the FUCA diet, but depending on how many there are, I may be prioritizing ones that are specific to the reading assignment. Next week, tomorrow, we are entering into the emotional part, which talks about our relationship to actually feeling and actually being willing to be in our bodies. So lots of fun and scary things are coming. Let me jump right in. We're going to do what we usually do. Anybody who's live on the call can ask any questions in the chat box, and I will also be answering the questions that have been asked ahead of time in any downtime. Any lulls and questions here, I will go over to the Mighty Networks and answer questions from there. So let's start. Montana asks, I'm going to put my question in now. I started the FUCA diet last August, and I'm finding that going through the physical part of the FUCA diet again is difficult in kind of the opposite way it was when I initially went through it. Geez, I made it so bright that it's like hard to read. Okay. Now putting more time into thinking how I think and approach food starts to make me nervous. I think since it's just becoming more normal now for me not to think about food, purposely thinking about it via writing prompts feels scary, as though I'm going to start obsessing again. Does that mean I have more work? Does that mean I have more to work through somewhere? What do you think that comes from? Interesting. I think it would be helpful to know a little bit more of the specifics of what kind of things are stressing you out. But my sense is that you have already moved past a lot of the physical restriction. And you are more in the emotional and mental parts of the resistance, and that over examining the physical part and the food part is actually kind of wigging you out and making you feel a little bit confused. Um, that is my sense. Does that resonate with you? That actually re-entering into a part that you don't necessarily need to overthink anymore is kind of like an unnecessary focus. And so I don't think anything is necessarily wrong. You said yes. Okay, that's my sense. That's my sense. And I also know Montana from Fucketeer Academy. And so I just have a sense. And that makes sense. I mean, and if anybody else is experiencing that, if they're like, I already worked through the physical stuff, like I don't need to overthink all of the rules. I don't need to overthink and read about all the food stuff. That's totally fine. I like never want to think about food again. And I used to be somebody who thought that I was deeply obsessed with food, that I wanted to be a food writer, that I wanted to like be Nigella Lawson, love Nigella Lawson, but I just don't care enough at this point now that I'm not in an obsessed, restricted kind of like, roller coaster state. So I totally understand. I never want to think about food again as such a mood. It is. I feel that way a lot. I love food. That does scare people, I think sometimes. They're like, I don't want to not love food. And I do love food. I love food, but I really don't want to overthink it. I really don't like overthinking it. I go through phases where I'm like, ooh, I really like, wouldn't it be nice to like be a better cook? But for the most part, I'm like, oh, also, I realized I'm wearing the exact same shirt that I wore last week. It's my Saturday shirt, apparently. Okay. Daphne says, regarding over-exercising, I feel this is more of an issue of the reason why you exercise, no? Normally, I don't over-exercise at all, but now the open water swimming season has started and I swim sometimes 2 to 3 hours a day, 4 times a week. But I don't find this over-exercising. What do you think of it? Over-exercising is all about the way that you're approaching it. So if someone is a professional athlete, they're going to be exercising all of the time, and it's part of their job. It's part of what they have to do. And hopefully it's something that brings them joy. But if you're going to be exercising a lot, you need to be eating a lot. You will be hungry for a lot of calories. I will never forget. It was back in my dieting days, and so I didn't put it together at the time, but I remember reading about how many calories Michael Phelps eats, and it's like over 10,000 a day or something. And it was just what he needed to be the athlete, to exercise. And it wasn't because he was binging. It was because he was really hungry because he was exercising so much. So over-exercising or exercise bulimia, which is actually a very, very common eating disorder, is where you are using exercise in an anxious and kind of control issue way that is part of an eating disorder, where it's all about either burning off the food that you ate or trying to control the size of your body. And so if you're swimming 2 to 3 hours a day, now I don't know if you mean like leisurely swimming or like exercise swimming for 2 to 3 hours a day. That sounds like a lot to me. However, if you're enjoying it, if it comes from a place of this feels so good, I'm so happy to be doing this, and you're eating enough and you're eating to hunger and you're eating for as hungry as you are, which may be very hungry if you're exercising a lot, it's fine. It's not over-exercising. It's all very relative, but it does have to do with both the mindset that you're in and the reason that you're exercising in the first place, and also whether you are eating enough for the movement that your body's doing. And when we exercise a lot, we need to eat a lot. And there's I feel like I've heard some like weight loss diet people say like, oh, exercising really isn't that great for weight loss because when you exercise a lot, you get really hungry and then people eat too much. And so they don't lose weight. And it's like, that's happening on purpose. Like the body's not sabotaging you. You need to eat a lot when you exercise because you're hungry. And if your body isn't losing weight, it's because your body either has been through the diet binge cycle so many times that it's like, fuck no, I'm not losing weight. I'm not letting go of this. Or it's because you're exactly where you're supposed to be, or both. Does that help? I want to see if you responded. She hasn't responded yet, Daphne, but let me know if that's helpful, if that perspective is helpful. Lisa says, when you first started the Fuck It diet, did you have any mantra? Like, I like this question a lot. Like, was there anything you constantly said to yourself to help yourself be able to say, just eat? Yes. It was, it was the only way out is through. I don't know if that's the exact Robert Frost quote, but it's at least a paraphrase of it. And I just knew inherently, and that's why I talk about eating yourself to the other side, which to some people is like, oh, so this is just eating a lot is just temporary. And that's not what I mean. I meant that I had to like eat my body into calm, into trusting that there was food. And I realized that I just had to go through it. I couldn't just like think my way up out of my appetite and out of my hunger and out of my relationship with food and gaining weight, that I had to really go through it. So the only way out is through is something that I really thought all of the time. And I think it's in my early blog posts. And I now see people on Instagram posting it in regards to healing your relationship with food. And I don't think that it's because they read my third blog post. I think that's something that people have also come to themselves. But that is something that I very, very inherently felt. And it's also a very spiritual principle that you can't avoid things, that you have to sit in the pain. It's also the way that we talk about emotions. You can't just like push it all away. You have to really process things, and for things to really complete themselves and in this kind of like energetic way, you have to accept it and to feel it and to really go through it. So that's why the only way out is through is something that felt really profound to me. And it's such a simple phrase, but it means so much. It means all the things I just explained. I'm curious if anybody else has their own version of that, or their own mantra of what really helps them stay connected, whether it's the only way out is through or fuck it. That's also one, obviously, that helped. Fuck it. Montana also responded to what we said before about her kind of getting overwhelmed by focusing too much on the food part, even though she's already sort of done this. She said, I just want delicious food to come to me so I can eat it and don't have to think about it. I feel the same way too. Wouldn't it be great to have a personal chef, everyone? Zoe says, not necessarily a question, but I'm feeling the following and just want to check in that these are normal. So 1, food bores me, but I'm still overeating. 2, I'm exhausted. 3, I keep looking down at my newly found sticky out belly and thinking a combination of gross and I don't care. Just want to check my thoughts and feelings are the norm on the Fuck It diet. Yes, I'm going to quickly go through how and why these are very normal. You're still in the first couple weeks. That's my understanding from what you've said before. So the fact that food is now getting boring to you is a shift. If you're still eating a lot, that's still really, really normal in the first couple weeks and months. I would challenge you to not call it overeating, to see yourself as eating yourself to the other side, to understand that you're actually eating in response to undereating. So it's actually just like the necessary part of balance before it starts to. So like if we look at a pendulum, right? So this is undereating, and then it swings over here. And then if you keep going to the undereating, it's going to keep swinging over here. But basically you've swung and you're allowing it, and it's going to eventually come to something that's a lot more normal and balanced feeling, but right now it is a reaction to years and decades of undereating. Yes, it's normal. You're exhausted. That's also normal. So say you had never been under eating, but you've just been over exercising. So you're essentially overexerting your body. So when you're under eating, you're overexerting your body because you're not really eating enough food, and your body has to compensate with all of these things, has to run on adrenaline and cortisol for sometimes decades. So if you were just doing the other side of it, like we talked about earlier, if you were just over exercising for years and years and years and years and years, don't you think when you finally stopped that you would be exhausted for a long time as your body sort of, again, swung in the other direction? So that's all that's happening. Your body is totally recalibrating. It is going through a very distinct healing phase. That's what this is. So it's very normal to be exhausted. And I would try to give into that as much as you possibly can. I totally understand that being really hungry and being really tired alarms people. And our first thought is that something is very wrong with us. It's literally why I wrote the book. And it's also why people read the book and they're like, this is so extreme. Why does it have to be this way? Well, it has to be this way because I've been writing about this for so long. And not only was it my experience, but it's everyone else's experience who actually, not everyone else's, but most people's experience who goes through this process. It's also very distinctly the same as recovering from an eating disorder on a physical level. So it's extreme stuff. And our culture doesn't talk about it, doesn't understand how traumatic and taxing dieting is. And so it makes sense that you are thinking that maybe something is horribly wrong. Literally, this group exists to remind you that it is a normal part of the process and that everything is okay. If in a year or two, you're still exhausted all the time, maybe something else is going on. But right now, I wouldn't worry about it at all. I was going to say something else about that, but hopefully I'll remember it in a moment. So it's also really, really normal to go back and forth in your thoughts about your body. And I'm sure that will last. See, that's the part, that's the mental and emotional part that lasts way longer than the physical refeeding part. So sometimes, a year or a few years to really rewire your brain and rewire the way you relate to your body and a changing body. Totally normal. So I hope that helps and that calms you down. Caitlin says, I've only ever exercised for weight loss, sometimes extreme. Sorry, it jumps to the bottom sometimes, so I need to refind where I'm going. Okay. Caitlin says, I've only ever exercised for weight loss, sometimes extreme. I was in a car accident and need to rehab, which involves exercise, but I'm not sure how to approach this in a healthy way. Advice. Exercise is not unhealthy. Over-exercise is unhealthy if you're not eating enough and not resting enough in response to it, Like athletes need to rest and they need to eat. I'm assuming you're talking about physical therapy. I mean, I can't imagine that they're making you run miles as you rehab. So if all you're doing is physical therapy, that's like great. And if every time I've had to do any sort of physical therapy for any sort of injury or any sort of pain because of imbalanced strength, I was able to have such an amazing appreciation for the good part of exercise. It can be so, there's a way to look at it where it's like, I am doing this to support my body, to support my mobility, to be embodied, to really just support myself essentially. And it has nothing to do with weight loss. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. If you happen to have a physical therapist who's telling you that you need to exercise to lose weight or something, obviously that's a different story. And we're talking about someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. But physical therapy, I think, is a gift because it allows you to see what exercise can do for you and how it doesn't have to have anything to do with diet culture or weight loss. Does that make sense? Also, I'm so sorry that you were in a car accident and have to rehab. That's like a very, talk about traumatic and frustrating process. I sprained my knee 2 or 3 months ago, and I couldn't walk for like 3 weeks. And just having that change, and I live in a city, and I like have to walk everywhere. It really, I mean, it was when the weather was getting beautiful too. It was like the beginning of spring. I was so depressed. I was so upset. I was also really scared that I'd done irreparable damage, and I didn't. And I went to physical therapy, and it was fine eventually, but it's really hard. So, I am really sorry that you're having to rehab. I hope that you're okay from the car accident, but this is also a gift. You're able to focus on strengthening and stretching and physical therapy to see the ways that exercise is supportive. And I'm guessing you're probably not able to exercise for any sort of weight control in the way that you used to. So it's also like a forced rest in that way. Let me know if that is the answer to the question that you were actually asking. Michelle, you said, sorry, you're a little late. That is so fine. You can go back and watch the beginning if you want to later. Zoe says you genuinely look pregnant. Sometimes that's like, if your gut is not used to handling food, if your gut is actually like repopulating different kinds and strains of bacteria. I heard some eating disorder specialists talk about how research on gut flora and gut bacteria and how that affects our health and how our health affects it and how it all affects itself and how it affects our mood and our brain and all of these things and our immune system. It's like they're at the very, very, very beginning stages of understanding how all of these things work. But what they do know is that having diverse gut flora is really important and helpful for our health and for our digestion, and that eating a diverse diet is a really easy way of having diverse gut flora. Now, that doesn't mean that other things can't affect your gut flora. Like antibiotics can like if you've been on a lot of antibiotics, it could have really like kind of messed with the balance. And that's why people talk about probiotics so much, because we really don't, we don't eat like dirty and fermented food like we used to. So that can help. So that's the idea of like adding things in, what can maybe be supportive to my health. But also as you begin to refeed more food than you're used to before and different kinds of food, there can definitely be an adjustment period and bloating. At the same time, this is another thing where it's like, if in a year or 2 or 3, you're still having a lot of bloating, maybe there's something that you're actually a little bit intolerant to or allergic to. Maybe there is something else going on, but in the beginning of this process, it really is normal. And just to see if you can trust the process, and give it a little bit longer, I think will be helpful for you. Okay. Daphne said, in response to the swimming 2 to 3 hours a day, I'm not exercising. I'm just addicted to swimming. And we always end up with a huge cake afterwards. So I'm relaxed. My mindset is totally fun. Swimming is like meditation. Yeah, that's great. That's like joyful living. You're doing great. So much of over-exercising is about control. Depending on, very naturally, like if you're going to go back to like super primal, like the way that our body is wired, there were probably times when we exercised so much, like had to be on the move all the time or whatever. But you very naturally would eat to hunger without overthinking it. And as long as you're doing that, you're fine. You don't need to micromanage your exercise, basically, or your hunger. Michelle said that perspective is exactly what happened to me with over-exercise. Fake Pearl says, my mantra has just been just eat for God's sake. I like that. I like that a lot. And Michelle also said, Daphne, it honestly sounds like your exercise is from a healthy place. This is just my feeling from someone who's used exercise for punishment. Fun is exactly what exercise should be. I totally agree. I wish we all could be at the pool swimming for 2 to 3 hours a day and eating cake afterwards. That sounds really wonderful. Michelle said, what if you go back and forth? I don't know what you're referring to. With over exercise, it's like going back and forth on a diet. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. But that's what it's doing to your body. It's a stressor. I don't know what you mean by going back and forth. I don't know if you mean going back and forth with your eating or with your exercise, but either way, again, it is okay. It is normal to, to not completely just like snap and be like, I'm totally better. These are deeply ingrained habits and also thought patterns and ways that we have felt safe in the past. So it makes sense that we find ourselves going back to habits that we used to have. And again, this group is for that kind of accountability, that kind of self-awareness around what you're doing. And so I promise it's okay. But I don't know exactly what you're referring to about going back and forth. Maybe I could give a more specific answer if I knew what you were referring to, I think. Darn it. Okay. Allison said, I believe you. Good. This all makes sense to me, and that's why I'm here. I hear you say that many people don't think it will work for them, and that makes me feel better and like I'm in good company. But, and then it jumps down, and I need to please reassure me why this is what we need to do. The ketogenic diet, Weight Watchers, mindful eating with a hunger scale, they all say that they are the right path for a lifetime of health too. Well, because of that, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to convince you that this is what you should be doing. To me, that's a little bit culty to be like, no, this is the only way. This resonates with people because of the things that I share and the science that I share. And they say, oh my God, that's me. That's what I did with diets. And if, on a core level, that I don't go out and evangelize people. I don't go out and say like, you're dieting, you should listen to this, because I don't think it works that way. I think that people have to have an inherent, even though it's scary, even though we have to work through all of these things over and over again, and we doubt ourselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's why we're here. There has to be an inherent knowledge, a deep inner knowledge that this is what we need to do, because I think it's too hard and too scary and too counterculture to do it and to go forward if we don't have that deep intuitive knowledge that this is what we need to do to heal. And I can't force that on you. And I hope that, the book can offer those things and kind of like be a mirror for you so you can say that resonates with me and that makes sense to me. So reading the book, I don't know if you're one of the people who's already read the book and are reading it for a second time, or if you're just reading it for the first time. But hopefully going back to the book and also reading what other people have to say and doing the tools, doing the brain dump, see what your inner, knowledge and intuition is saying to you. And also that exercise of writing a letter from your body can be really helpful. But I really don't think that I have the power to tell you that this is the one true way. I think it has to be something that really makes sense in your bones, even if it's difficult. And then people come into the group and they say, I'm really struggling with this. I'm really doubting this. I need perspective on this. And that's totally normal. But yeah, I think that deep inner intuition has to be something that comes from you. And if you had it for a moment, which is why you joined the group, and now you're not so sure, that's okay. Maybe you need time. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe the tools will actually help give that to you, but I can't give that to you. I can only teach what I do know and what I have learned and what I have experienced and what other people have experienced. I hope that that's helpful. But that's the best that I could do. Okay. So Zoe said, Yes, that she's just in the first couple weeks of the fuck it diet, which Zoe was the one who was talking about being really exhausted, getting bored of food, but still feeling like she's overeating, and something else. Having, looking down at her stomach, feeling like she looks really bloated, having different feelings about it, that she doesn't care, but also it's freaking her out. When our bodies change, there are so many reasons, like cultural fat phobia aside, that we're going to say, why is this changing? Is something horribly wrong? And so hopefully, again, this group and talking about how weight gain can be so healing is a helpful piece of the puzzle as you inevitably worry. Michelle said, okay, that explains me. Oh, it's hard because I don't know what this is referring to either. All the time. Thank you. And thank you, Heather. I always want my recovery to be this perfect event, like just fix me already. Right. Another reason why this is different from diets is that this isn't meant to be like a 30-day quick fix. This is a life overhaul, as I say in the book, just one book. But I think Michelle is talking about Heather saying that recovery is not a linear process, and it's okay to go back and forth, and it's okay to, I don't consider this formal eating disorder recovery, though you could say in some ways that it is. But people who do run eating discovery accounts and groups, what do they call it's like a relapse. They call it a relapse because in so many ways eating disorders are like an addiction. So it's totally normal. Sonia says, will this group still exist after the 8 weeks are over? Like, will we be able to check in with each other in October? Yes, I'm going to keep the group open for up until I run this group again. And meaning up until I sell the book club program again. And I haven't decided if there's going to be like a discount if you want to go through the whole thing all over again, or how I'm going to be running that. But you will be in the group for a long time, for, the next at least half a year. If I am ever closing it down, I will give you so much notice. There also will be a way to participate in the next one for less money than you paid for this first time. If you ever want to do that again, you guys can start your own group all together on Facebook. You will have so much notice, but there will be months and months and months before you need to worry about that. And I want to keep this going for as long as we can. So I haven't worked through on like a business level, like how it's going to work from group to group to group to group. And I haven't even begun to think about that yet. But either way, you will not just be like booted out and be like, where did all those people go? That's not going to happen. But also this particular group is going to exist for months after the 8 weeks is over. So I hope that that's calming to you. Anna says, I told myself that I gave up dieting about a year ago with a few relapses along the way. I first listened to your book in April after attempting to work through body image issues. While I'm trying to let go of the insecurities about gaining weight, I'm thinking I have a long way to go because the thought that maybe I will lose weight eventually enters my mind daily. I'm a little freaked out to think that this could take years. I've been dieting for at least 40 years. Sorry, it's hard to see if things go on. So I don't know if you actually ask a question at the end of that or if you're just sharing that you're a little stressed. But let me try and see. Because I'm in a dark room, I turn my brightness on like as bright as it can possibly be so I can be as bright as possible so you can actually see me. Not that it matters. But in the chat, the background is black and the text is white, and it is hard to read. So please bear with me. Anna, I'm trying to see if you actually asked a question there, but basically you're just saying that you're freaked out. And let me see if I can figure out the best way to respond to that. Basically, a lot of people probably feel the same way. That they have a hope this is hard to avoid, and it's something that honestly everyone in the group, I'm assuming, is working through to some extent. The hope that once you heal yourself from dieting, you will magically be what you hoped dieting would make you. And so that is why working on our internalized fat phobia, our externalized fat phobia, our beliefs about ourselves and our worth, and all of those things are a really important part of this process, because everyone's weight is going to do something different. And they even say this for intuitive eating. If you're really learning from someone who's genuinely trying to teach you intuitive eating and not some bastardized version of turning it into a diet and a weight loss attempt. They say some people who eat intuitively will lose weight only. It's probably pretty rare, but depending on their diet background, but sometimes that is what happens. Sometimes people's weight stays the same and just does normal life fluctuations. And sometimes people have to gain weight and stay there. And sometimes people have to gain weight. And then maybe as their body gets a little bit calmer and trusts and isn't in a yo-yo, it comes back down sometimes. There's really no way to account for what is going to happen with your weight. There's probably a part of you that has a good idea based on how you've yo-yoed in the past and sort of what your weight set range has been. But again, there really is no way for me to assure you of that, except to offer the science and the studies and then the case studies. That's kind of why, and it's another thing that this group can be really good for, to say, this is what happened to me, and this is what happened to me, and this is what I hoped would happen, but this is what I had to accept, or I'm so much happier now and I never thought I could be. All these things are really important and helpful for us to have a sense of what the list of possibilities could be and try to come to some kind of terms with that, and also really genuinely want to begin to take care of ourselves in a more kind and trusting way, and also prioritize our well-being and our happiness and our self-image over the cultural obsession with thinness. It's hard. I know all of this stuff is super ingrained, but it is worth it for most people who do this. Of course, there are outliers who are like, I liked being skinny more, but that's not true happiness. That's, that's fear taking over. And sometimes fear does take over, but there is a light of calm and peace at the end of the tunnel, even though it's hard. So Michelle said, I need another knee replacement and I'm really sad. I can't even do joyful exercise. This one is tough for me. I'm so sorry. Again, I only had a lately sprained knee for 3 weeks and it was miserable. So I totally empathize. Hopefully the knee replacement surgery will eventually get you to a place where you can be as mobile as possible. But it's a long road and I'm really sorry you have to go through that. Kate said, thank you for your response. You're welcome. I don't remember what my response was and what your question was. But you're welcome. Okay. It's so hard to navigate these comments with the brightness of the white and the brightness of my screen right now. Where was I? Oh, and Jennifer said, Michelle, what about doing something like chair yoga? That's a really great recommendation. That you could probably get a book or probably find some website that teaches chair yoga poses, and it's for the elderly, and it's for limited mobility, and it's for people with different, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Disability, mobile, physical disability. So that could be great. Look into that and see how that feels. But I understand, if you love walking and you're not able to walk, it's very frustrating. So Michelle had said before, what if I go back and forth? And I said I didn't know what she was referring to, and she meant with her eating. But we addressed it that It's totally normal it's also really hard to even know that you're restricting before you're restricting if you're in such a habit of doing that. So sometimes people will be like, oh, I restricted yesterday and I didn't even realize it till now because I'm starving and obsessed with food. It's normal. It's not fun, but it is normal. Okay. Zoe said, the science of the fuck it diet is the part that stops me in my tracks when I'm reading. It just makes sense. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Jennifer said, you're welcome. I think she's talking about chair yoga. My mom has really limited mobility, although she's older, so she does chair yoga. It may be good for damn it jumped to the bottom again. May be good for a bad knee. Good luck. Okay. Gallery Chaos said, Michelle, I'm a yoga instructor and chair yoga is great. You can probably find YouTube videos with ideas. Hope you heal quickly. And Jennifer said, Zoe, I completely agree. I'm obsessed with the science and I feel like it is revelatory. Lauren said, question in relation to fear of hunger. What if you know that you aren't going to have access to food all day and eat more than you want to eat, so you'll stay full until you can eat again? Is that famine mentality? That is a combination of things. It just makes sense because if you're not going to be able to eat all day, eating a lot in the morning to totality, the idea of not being able to eat for a day is that much more traumatic to your body. So the fact that you would maybe get a little manic and bingy around food preemptively makes even more sense. Basically, it's nothing to worry about. It's actually your body just trying to take care of you, and also then your mind and body connection maybe going overboard for good reason because of a dieting and famine, semi-famine past. So yes, but it's not a problem. Does that make sense? So Allison said, I'm reading for the second time, and yes, it does resonate, but it just doesn't feel good to be heavy. Thank you. I'll work on doing some more of the writing. Thank you for such a balanced answer. You're welcome. And I totally understand. I do. I really do. I think the tools will help. And I think the breathe and feel will help, because half of why it doesn't feel good to be heavy is because we are so afraid to be in our bodies and we haven't been in our bodies for so long. Half of it is cultural, and maybe there's three parts actually. A third of it's cultural, a third of it is it does physically feel different. And some, people do say that if they haven't also been strengthening, moving around the world can be a little bit harder, though the answer to that is that strengthening can really, really help, focusing on that and not focusing on weight loss. And then the other third is actually processing emotion and beginning to be willing to be in the body that we have will also, at least a third, make it a little bit more comfortable. Becca says, I so hope we can get a discount on the next one. Yes, that would be something that I would definitely want to do. The next version of the book club. But I have not figured out anything, so I haven't said anything, but it makes sense that you guys are asking about the group and everything. But I just need to wrap my head around what this is going to look like going forward. But yes. Sonia said, I agree. You can turn down the brightness and save your eyes. Oh, okay, great. It was really bad. I can't believe I was doing that to myself. Also, I love the wire diamond thingies behind you. Where did you get them, if you don't mind? You mean this? I wish I knew where to tell you to get them. There was this cute little gift shop. It's on the tiniest little nail and it falls down all of the time. And Molly jumps up and her tail is going. She whacks it off. They're really cute, but I don't know where to tell you to get them. There's a cute little gift shop in South Philly called Occasionette, but I'm sure that they're available other places. I just don't know where. Sorry, but thank you. Michelle, Daphne says, Michelle, chair yoga is good. Feldenkrais is wonderful. And swimming, there is no impact. Also, water gym. walking in the water. It helped my husband a lot. I know how hard it is. Every time I start reading your book, I have to go eat. I notice now that it happened during this online session too. Does anybody have this too? I would be very interested to know if other people feel the same way. There might be something just like mental about it, or maybe it's a reminder that you can eat, or maybe it's a reminder that you're hungry, or maybe it's also your body saying, prove to me that I'm allowed to eat, which is, again, a normal part of this process, especially in the beginning. Michelle said, thank you. I appreciate it. I was just having a pity party moment. Chair yoga sounds really good. Sabrina said, Daphna, I am. I think she's saying, oh, look who it is. Look who it is. She doesn't know what I'm referring to. Look at you. Look. No. All right, here we go. Everything's fine. She can tell that I'm talking to somebody though, and she doesn't understand like who. Anyway. Okay, Sabrina said that she's eating, I think. She just got back from yoga right before the call. But yeah, I couldn't read the book while eating because it just made me more and more hungry. Oh, interesting. Lauren said, famine mentality. Yes, that makes sense. So I think your question was, question was about, say you know that you're not going to eat for the day and you eat a lot beforehand. Is that normal, or is that a response to famine mentality? And it's both. It's a normal response to famine mentality, as it should be. Like, I don't really see any other way. The only other way would be to eat a lot afterwards, and both are good and fine and normal. Here, I want her to begin this. Okay. Oh, you're part of the call, Molly. All right, I'm going to take this opportunity to drink some water. Okay, Sonia said, brain dumps. You recommend writing, like the physical act, and I prefer typing my thoughts. My brain jumps around a lot, and I feel like typing gets it out faster. Thoughts? That's totally fine. For our purposes, that's totally fine. There's something very somatic and healing in a different way and tactile about pen to paper that some people may prefer, and may also offer like a different kind of experience, and you may want to play around with both. And there's also something to be said for, who am I talking to? Who am I talking to? Am I talking to myself? There's also something to be said for it being slower, and it kind of allows you to process as you go a little bit more and forces your brain to slow down a little bit if possible. You may want to play around with it, but if typing feels good to you, it's totally, totally fine. Also, we have not officially gotten to the brain dumps. I don't know why I'm like doing weird hand things when I'm talking. We've not officially gotten to the brain dumps in the curriculum, and it will be coming in a future week when we get to it in the reading assignment in the mental part. So for people who have not yet read the whole book yet, don't worry. For people who have, you can totally be using all of the tools in the book. And we'll get to it when we get to it, and we'll focus on it way more when it's actually part of the curriculum. Yeah, I know. Okay. Montana said, that change in brightness didn't even make that much of a difference on this end. So yeah, it's probably because I'm seeing myself brighter because it's brighter on the screen, but I'm thinking that it's more of a light, but it's not. It's pointless. So good. I'm glad I turned it down. Jennifer said, hi, Molly. Sonia said, I'm so glad that Molly has healed. I know, me too. Me too. She's such a good girl. Sabrina said, hi, Molly. They're all saying hi to you, Molly. What do you say? So we said, yep, I always eat when I'm reading, and I just had to go grab some granola. Well, if I wasn't talking, I'd probably be eating too. I'd be joining you. Michelle said, "Oh, sweet puppy." And Zoe said, "Molly looks bigger in real life." Molly, Molly, like even looks bigger and smaller to me, just like depending on the perspective. She's very much like a large medium dog, which means that sometimes she looks medium to me, and sometimes she looks humongous, depending on what dog she's around, and also like when I hold her up and her face is here, her face is like humongous. Ready? Stop. She I'm trying to. Okay, do you see how she's pushing me away? What are you doing? Come here. She doesn't want me to pick her up. She doesn't like it. Okay. Well, I'll show you later. Kathleen said, I haven't experienced that the fuck diet makes me hungrier. That's totally fine. That is, everybody has a different, she's literally pushing me away. Everyone has a different, you want to hold hands? A different past with eating and restricting. It's possible that your body is okay to just kind of like go forward normally, and that it's a much less dramatic healing process on a physical level. And that's totally fine. And I'm sure people are really envious of you because it doesn't feel as scary and out of control. It's also possible that maybe in a month something will shift and you'll get really hungry and go through a period of that. But it is totally fine that that you're not feeling extremely out of control hungry. Unless your appetite is like really, 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 really low, which would then be a sign of an underworking metabolism that can sometimes happen from more extreme cases of restriction. I would not be worried about it. What am I saying? Puppy obsession? Yes, I have a puppy obsession, but only with my dog. Lauren said, I listened to The Artist's Way because of your podcast, and morning pages have changed my life. Oh, it changed me so much. Thank you. You're welcome. And the brain dump is a version of that. There's less rules. Like it doesn't have to be in the morning, and it doesn't have to be written out by hand, though there are reasons why that might be a little bit more healing. I'm just reading the next. I recommend The Artist's Way a lot. I mean, it might be a lot. It probably is too much to add to all the things that we're doing here because it's its own like course with prompts and reading assignments. So it might be a really nice thing for any one of you to go through after this is over. But I love The Artist's Way. So we said, this is a very real question. When is the Fuckatite Hawaii retreat? I want to do a retreat so badly. And I would love to throw one and have a lot of you guys come. So maybe you will inspire me to really get it together. I'm very stressed about it because it's a leap of faith to book a place and to make the plans and to actually go through the planning process. But I've always wanted to have a retreat in a really wonderful location, and it'd be like a weekend or a long weekend retreat. So maybe if you guys keep bugging me, I'll get my act together and actually make it happen. I'm like, can't help but smile right now because that would be really great. Okay, I'm going to, oh my God. Heather lives in Hawaii. I forgot. Yeah, if you guys really want to do a Fuckatite retreat, this is something that we can genuinely talk about because why not? Why not? The time is now. So yeah, let's actually keep talking about it, and maybe I'll actually get my act together and we'll make it happen. Okay. I'm going to answer the questions that were asked ahead of time. It's already been an hour. Oh God. All right. So if anyone needs to leave, I understand, but I'm going to begin to answer the questions that were asked before the call started, if I can even find it. Okay. Here we go. Annie says, I may delete this when I finish rereading the section, but I'm watching a past call and it's triggering a question I wanted to remember to ask. I love to exercise. Well, not really, but I love the high I get after a good workout. Right now, that only ends up being 2 or 3 times a week, but that's totally okay. I no longer force myself to go if I'm not feeling it. But the endorphins from a good workout just make me a happier person. I handle stress better and I snap at my kids less, and it's just so important to my mental health. My question is, as long as I honestly eat without judgment as much as my body wants afterwards, will this hinder my progress? No. Unless you're too exhausted to exercise, which people are in the beginning. But if you're not, it's totally fine. Again, you may go through a phase in a month where you're like, I'm way more tired than I was last month. And you will want to honor that. But exercising is good for you if you're not exhausted or starving or hungry or dieting. And hopefully earlier in this call, we actually talked about that. So hopefully that'll answer this question as well. But she said, on a slightly different note, is it okay to want to be stronger and more flexible and to move without aches and pains? Of course. Are those okay motivating factors rather than wanting to change how I look? No, that's great. I mean, sometimes it's too much pressure. Sometimes it's impossible to move without aches and pains, but sometimes and often exercise can be really, really helpful and supportive to the body and minimize aches and pains. So those are all of the great reasons to exercise. So yes, yes, yes. I hope that quick answer is helpful. And I hope that the earlier talking about over exercising also helps to support the answer to this question. Molly asked a question that I answered in the comments because I wanted to answer it and I wanted to actually do a little bit of research. So I had some stuff to back it up in the text, but I'm going to read her question and my answer and then move on to the next question. Unless there's another. Oh my God. Heather, I didn't see your aging question. Sorry, can you ask it again? It is kind of hard to follow all of the. Okay, can you ask it again? I'm sorry that I missed it. And while you're asking it again, I'm going to answer Molly's question. She said, I have a question. What about health? My brother is fat like me, not super fat, just fat. And again, super fat, small fat, these are all like official, unofficial terms. And someone said in Landwell, they talk about it in the book Happy Fat. She talks about it. I'm not an expert on the terms, so maybe I should be, but she's actually referring to like terms. And he's been told to lose that if he loses weight, he will not have sleep apnea anymore, and that it is caused by him being fat. He has to wear a machine at night to sleep. Also, my mom, who is fat, also just fat, not super fat. She has been on and off diets for about 60 years, has been told she has type 2 diabetes because of being fat. And if she loses weight, she could cure this. And there are a lot of articles in the media about people who go on extreme diets and cure type 2 diabetes. If we should not diet, then why will dieting cure the above things? It will not necessarily cure those things. This is something I have to deal with when I tell them that I am no longer dieting. They counter with the above points, and I do not know what to say. My parents are constantly saying I will get type 2 diabetes, and I do not know what to say to that. Totally empathize with this because it's such a cultural stressor. So this is my answer. And the trigger warning is that there is a use of BMI words in what I copy pasted as part of the answer. I said, I'm going to answer this one now, but I will also address it on the call. It's a good question because it's poking at a cultural bias and assumption, but being fat does not cause type 2 diabetes. If it did, every fat person would have type 2 diabetes, or at least a much, larger percentage of people who are fat would have type 2 diabetes. They may sometimes and often go hand in hand, which is what they mean when they say weight-related diseases and not weight-caused diseases. And even very mainstream diabetes organizations explain this. This is a quote. Stop. The US obesity rate is around 37%. The diabetes rate is just under 10%. And also, if you look even at type 2 diabetes, not everybody who has type 2 diabetes is fat. So that should also answer the question. If obesity caused diabetes, the diabetes rate would be much higher. There's a lot more to diabetes than weight alone. The likelihood for diabetes lies deep in the genes. To develop diabetes, you must be genetically predisposed. If you are predisposed, eating a healthy diet, which again, we actually are trying to get towards a healthy diet through this roundabout process of healing your relationship to food, but eating a healthy diet delays but does not prevent diabetes. This myth comes from uninformed observation. Again, this is not me, this is the quote. While it's true many people who have diabetes are overweight, people sometimes make causal connections that aren't there. So this is me now. It's a genetic chronic illness that may be triggered by different stressors, and even thin people can and do develop type 2 diabetes. So in my book, I talk about the experiment where low-income people with type 2 diabetes were given access to free housing, and it improved their symptoms of type 2 diabetes with no weight loss or dieting at all. The social impact on disease, the stress part of it, and the social stress part of it is a really important missing link. And weight stigma and weight cycling play right into the chronic stress and inflammation that we ideally want to lower if we're really looking at health and if we zoom out and we're looking at health and long-term health. Where was I? Eating fruits and vegetables, meaning not only eating fruit and vegetables, but adding in fresh foods and sleeping well and having good emotional and mental health, or, improving or taking care of our emotional and mental health, and slowly encouraging yourself to do gentle movement that you find joyful are all things that can and will improve our health without focusing on weight loss. Those are the things that the Fuck It Diet is meant to help get us closer to. The initial period of eating yourself out of the diet cycle may feel really irresponsible. But focusing on weight is what puts us back in the yo-yo, the diet binge, weight cycling, which again is detrimental to overall health, but also not good for blood sugar either. Restricting is not good for blood sugar. The goal is, because there's binging, but also restricting is, even alone, is hard on blood sugar. I'm just trying to find where I was. The goal is to happily and easily crave and eat a varied diet, get off the yo-yo, stop being at odds with your body, start being kinder to yourself, develop some slightly better coping mechanisms, and eventually after the refeeding and exhaustion wears off, get into some form of gentle movement, even if it's just joyful walking. All of those things are good for your health. Sleep apnea is another one where thin people also get sleep apnea. So telling people to lose weight is short-sighted and also doesn't take into account that intentional weight loss backfires and there's regain, and that it leads to weight cycling. For everyone, I highly recommend the book Body Respect, if you have not read it, by Linda Bacon and Lucy Aphramor, because it does go way into more detail about the science of weight and weight loss and health that so much of my book is inspired by. But my book is not a science book, and Body Respect really is. Hi. So I hope that that's helpful, not just for Molly, but for other people who have that in the back of their mind and worry about that. So Molly said, there are a couple questions from Molly that I'm going to try to get through. But let me actually answer Heather's question first. You said, I feel like you don't discuss accepting an aging body and a non-diet body at the same time. Do you have nuggets of wisdom on how to accept both at the same time? It's a really good question. I think there's a lot of overlap in the assumptions that we have about what we're supposed to look at. There's a lot of fear of death. There's a lot of fear of imperfection. And I feel like there's overlap in the emotional part too, like this fear of being a human, this fear of being fallible and imperfect, and also a fear of not being attractive, or a fear of being disregarded or not having as much social currency. So I feel like it's so related. Obviously, I have until recently, been a young person writing about not dieting. And I'm in my early 30s. So my personal experience is limited in that way, though I have always worked with people who have been older than me and going through menopause. And they've always talked about how there's such a parallel between the way we relate to our weight and the way that we relate to our body as it ages. So the only thing I can really tell you is that all of the tools and all of the ways of beginning to reintegrate your experience with your body and the brain dump and the breathe and feel will hopefully be illuminating in that way. But it's a very similar fear, and it's a very similar thing that's sort of like all of the ads that you see on television are trying to help you lose weight or look, 20 years younger. And what does it mean that we're also afraid to, to look like a teenager that's skinny and like not actually have to accept the imperfections of being human. It totally makes sense that it's something that you're struggling with. I actually think it could be really wonderful to bring this up in the group because I think that there are people who can give their personal experiences in a way that'll be really supportive. Sabrina said, could we get a list of book recommendations in the group? Yes, we can start a thread. And that's also why I started the resources and recommendations. I'll start a thread and we can add to it. That's like on my mental to-do list of my favorite books, and then we can add to it along the way. And then maybe I can compile it as a resource at the end. Okay. I'm going to keep answering these questions that were asked beforehand, but hold on. There's no Alj in this either. Okay. So this question is, I'm very aware that I do not want my daughter to ever get into the diet cycle. When it comes to food choices, I tell her there is not good or bad food. However, my question is, how do I make sure she does not just eat cake and pizza without saying she must eat vegetables and proper natural food so it does not turn into a good or bad food thing? Does that make sense? Yes, it does make sense. And the answer, and I do recommend Ellen Satter, ELLENSATTER. She writes books on childhood feeding from a very intuitive eating perspective. It's about modeling variety, like you eating varied foods and not it's about you modeling the behavior that you want her to have. And I don't mean like that you need to worry about you going through the refeeding process, but making yourself food that is varied, that has many different things, that has vegetables and fruit, offering those things to her, talking about why a varied diet is good for supporting your health because there are vitamins and different things, and different food has different things, but also talking about how important listening to your hunger and not having rules around food and how okay eating snacks and treats are. So it's about modeling it. It's about offering a varied diet. It's about trusting for her to go through her own intuitive eating process, because it's very possible that she picked up your past way of relating to food, whether you were aware of it or whether you wanted, you probably didn't want to pass down your food stuff to her, but it's really hard for children not to pick up what their parents are doing. So she may have to go through her process of kind of proving to herself that she is allowed to eat cake while you do, and whether she's aware of it or not. So I would not be worried about it if she needs to go through her own process. But also, I think I remember you saying that she is like a young teenager, like 13, I think. Teenagers get really hungry. They're going through a lot of changes. It's normal to gain weight before they grow. It's normal to gain weight even if they're not going to grow much taller. So just trusting that process and trusting her body, and then modeling the beliefs and behavior around food and weight that you that you want for yourself and that you would want for her. I think that that's all you need to do. Again, it's not simple. Everything is really loaded, but I think that that will help. You said something else. You said that she's always hungry after a yummy supper. And again, my response about it's normal for teenagers to be really hungry and to want to eat a lot of snacks and desserts. Like, it's normal. It's really normal. And the more you can just offer the good stuff, and then when she's still hungry and wants to eat more, totally fine. Molly, you're being so annoying. Yeah. Sorry. This is why I went upstairs. This is one of the reasons I went upstairs. So see, look how big her head is. Oh, Daphne said, our culture medicalizes menopause like it medicalizes fat. Boom. Yep. Perfect. True. Okay. Another question is, do you think you would have found it harder to go on the fuck it diet or struggled with the weight gain as I am if you had been fat to start with? The quick answer is yes, it would have been harder. It's culturally more loaded. There's no way that it wouldn't have been harder for me. I know you say you were not fat, which I can see you are not. So I was wondering how your thoughts to this process might have been if you had been fat and that meant you had to get fatter during the process and most likely stay fat, not small fat, fat. Does that make sense? It makes total sense. The answer is yes, it would have been harder in all of the ways that we are beginning, to understand as a collective and as a culture about what weight stigma and fat phobia does in microaggressions and in aggressions. Everything would have been harder. People would have given me a harder time. I would get more hate on the internet. I would maybe have had a harder time trusting it in the beginning, especially without having that activists to follow and people to kind of model it for me. It would have been harder. It would have been. I'm really lucky in so many ways. As I was going through it by myself, before I learned more of what I learned and more of what I write about in the book about weight and health science, that people, especially as somebody who wrote about it. So I know you're not actually asking me that from that perspective, but as somebody who writes about it, because I am thinner, random people can say, oh, that must, it must really work, because we have all these assumptions about what it means to be thin and what it means to be fat. And I know, and I hope you are starting to know, that those things are misguided and based on weight and health myths. But yes, all of that would have been harder. And that's just the truth. But that doesn't mean that it isn't worth it. And it doesn't mean that it isn't doable. But it is, even if I woke up tomorrow and I was 100 pounds heavier, or even if I gained weight, over the course of a year and I was 100 pounds heavier, I would have to adjust to that. I would have to adjust to that in so many ways. And it would force me to go back to the basics of learning to and deciding to accept my body as it is, and to learn to take care of myself without giving into all the ways that society makes us think we need to be taking care of ourselves. So the answer is yes. And okay. And then this is Molly's last question. She said, how do I know that I'm not just greedy? How do I know? Molly, if you're going to eat this, it's going to be so annoying. So you're not allowed to. How do I know that I'm not just greedy? How do I know that I'm actually refeeding myself and not just using it as an excuse to eat as much as I want because I'm greedy and like the taste of things and want more and more and more? I'm worried that is what I'm doing. I totally understand. This was my big fear for such a long time, not on the fuck it diet, but before the fuck it diet, that I was this glutton, that I had like a horrible problem, that it was like, that was my problem. That gluttony and greed and an inability to be controlled was my problem. And again, this is the one where I can't tell you this. This is like a feeling in your bones, but you're not. And first of all, the fact that you were, able to go on a diet before, but it backfires. And that feeling of not being able to control yourself around food and wanting to just be able to feed yourself, it's such a primal thing. So it's not greed, it's just survival. And it's impossible to disconnect the emotional part of wanting to feel fed and wanting to feel safe from the physical part. And so they get tangled, and we feel like this means that we are this out of control person who needs to get a grip. But I promise that you are not just greedy. You just are recovering from decades of trying to starve yourself. Even if it was unsuccessful, it was unsuccessful for a reason. Jennifer says, I'm really curious what to expect normal and neutralized food and eating to look like when I get there. I know you cover this in the book, but I'm curious what your daily life is like now and what others' experiences are once you I'm getting notifications at the same time. And what others' experiences are like once you're out there living your life. I know it'll vary for everyone, and that we keep seeking guidelines, me in particular, wanting to do it right, but hoping to get an idea of what it might look like. Second question along these lines, are there any things that we should watch out for as something to go awry? Thank you. So I already answered, and I said there is a reason why I don't get more specific about what my eating is like, because I am this sort of like de facto authority on this. I think that me talking about how I eat, especially talking about how I eat now, especially can and will be used, even if you don't want to, as something to judge your own experience against, or to assume that maybe this is the only way that it will work. I find it more helpful to share what the beginning of my process was like, which I do in the book. But I think this is a really, really good question to take to the group, because I think that for the people who have found more ease around food, I think hearing lots of different people's perspectives is more helpful than me, your leader here, saying this is what my day-to-day relationship with food is like, and this is what I eat. But I will say that every morning, every weekday, I go to my favorite cafe, and I work and I eat a cappuccino. I drink a cappuccino and I eat this amazing, delicious homemade breakfast sandwich that they make with cheese and like grainy mustard and eggs on I think it's some sort of English muffin every morning. And when I get sick of it, occasionally I order the yogurt and granola and fruit, but I rarely get sick of it. And I've been doing that for like a year. That's all I'll give you, because I think giving you more will be, I just have always been super wary of telling anyone or writing about exactly what I eat, because I know that I would have thought, oh, there's some way that I need to emulate that. And if I wasn't emulating that, I would get nervous, because it does change all of the time. I mean, not my breakfast these days, but that's just because I'm in a rut and because there's only one good cafe that has good food around here. Molly is now chewing a bone, so this is going to get really annoying. So hopefully we'll wrap up soon, but I'm going to check the chat. Lisa said, whatever I would say to a teen about how normal it is to gain weight and how it's necessary and healthy is how I talk to myself about menopause. Yes. Yes. This is so annoying. Molly, this is why you're not allowed to be part of the calls, because okay. Sorry if anybody is like annoyed by chewing sounds. Heather said something my therapist said that really resonated about how life is now. Your relationship with food is never something you'll be able to ignore. Exactly. That's why you can't treat it like a drug. It's like a friendship that doesn't need daily upkeep, but something you will need to come back to at regular periods. It's unrealistic to think you'll never think about food ever. That's so good. That's so good. That's such a good way to look at it. All right. There's one more question that I'm going to answer before I go take Molly to the dog park, because she's getting Oh, Zoe, you did make the call. Do you still want me to answer this? Zoe asked about this group and if it was ending. And I already said that this group is not going anywhere for a while. I would say at least a half a year, if not more. And also, I didn't answer the end of Jennifer's question about, she asked another question. Okay, so she said one more question about allowing all foods and refeeding. I find that I'll have a thought about a food like tonight, ice cream, and then I'm in a debate with myself about whether I really want it. Is it a craving? Is it just a passing thought? I try to be more in tune with my body and what I want, but also thinking it's not the best idea to just eat whatever pops into my head unless it's a true craving or I want X. Is this normal? And is there a strategy for navigating this? It's very normal. In the beginning, I was really weird about trying to figure out what I was craving. And I would put like a lot of different weird things on my plate or in front of me. And I would like take bites of it and be like, no, I don't really want that. And I would move on to another thing. And I'd be like, oh, but I'm still hungry. And I was trying to like figure out how to follow my intuition. And sometimes I did it in too precious of a way, but I was really erratic about what I was craving. I would think I was craving one thing and I would eat 3 bites and be like, I don't really want that. And I would kind of go and get more things out and try more things, be like, ugh, that's gross. Why do I even buy that? So basically there's no right way to do it except to allow yourself to eat and allow yourself to be like, that isn't really what I wanted. You don't need to say that's not a true craving. Maybe you need to eat a bite of it. I mean, if you have to go to the store before you eat a bite of it, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing about the practicality of feeding yourself that, again, we already addressed of you're allowed to make it as practical as possible. There's no perfect way to do this. And that's basically the answer to the question. But I think it's better to allow something than to make rules on what's a true craving, if that makes sense. And then Jennifer also asked at the end of her last question, is there anything that we should watch out for as something going awry? I think the only thing to watch out for is if you're completely resistant to doing any of the tools, especially breathe and feel, especially the brain dump. Because that means that there are things that will affect the process as it's so tangled up in our life and our past trauma and our beliefs. Those are the opportunities for self-reflection and checking in and figuring out the next place that's either blocked or resistant or that needs to be uncovered and paid attention to. And so I think that if you're super resistant to those 2 basic ways of checking in with yourself and working and beginning to work through the mental and emotional pieces, that there's more resistance going on. And then again, like if in 2 years you are, like if you're experiencing health problems or exhaustion or like severe bloating that lasts like a year or 2, you need to go to the doctor and there is something else going on. And that's what the doctor exists for, and I think what we do with diets is assume that a diet's going to lead to perfect health. And I think that it's possible for people to use the fuck it diet in that way too. Like if I just heal my metabolism, then I'll have perfect health. And that's not necessarily how it goes to be human. So just being honest with yourself about seeking other support and understanding that there may be more that goes into taking care of your health than just getting over disordered eating. Oh, and Jennifer, you're on the call and you said, thank you. That helps. I reliably overthink it. Yeah. And that's okay. And again, that's normal in the beginning. I mean, I did the same thing. I was like, what am I craving exactly? And it was part of me wanting to get in tune with my intuition, but also wanting my experience of eating to be like amazing and exactly what I wanted each time, which isn't always possible. But when it was possible, like when I was at home at night and had a cupboard full of things and I didn't know what I wanted, I would like have a little bit of everything till I figured out what I wanted. And I do not do that anymore, but I did that for a long time, like a year or two. But it wasn't charged. There wasn't as much drama, Zoe, that's for you. There wasn't as much drama in it as it went forward, but I still would be like, I don't know what I want. I don't want any more of this ice cream right now. I want something else. I want something salty or whatever. But yes, you don't need to overthink it. You can just eat. And if you are overthinking it, that's okay too. Does anybody else have any last questions before I sign off for the day and we go into our Saturdays? I know some of you are in nighttime over in Europe, and those of you in the US, some of you it's morning in California. Some of you might even be in Australia. That's very unlikely. I think it would be like 2:30 in the morning. Any more questions? Kathleen said, thank you so much for the call. It was so helpful. I'm so glad that the calls are helpful. Truly, truly, truly. I know there's a lot of repetition involved, but I understand why. I mean, there's also a reason why the book is repetitive in some ways of like, you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to be hungry, you're allowed to eat a lot of food. We need to hear it over and over and over and over again. Kathleen said, sending lots of love to everyone. Remind me of some things that we said that we'd bring into the group, like the books. I'll try to remember that. And we can keep talking about this retreat because I need a little nudge, but why not? Jennifer said, it's really helpful. I'm glad I finally got to see you live. Oh, yes. I normally volunteer with donkeys on Saturdays. What do you do with donkeys? That's so cool. Heather said, thank you. Today was awesome. Lisa said, I'm always impressed at how you keep track of who asked what as a ton of comments rolled in. Well, I don't really. I get very confused, especially when it was so bright. Sabrina said, retreat. I know you have to don't remind me now. Remind me later. Remind me in the group. Let's all keep nagging Caroline about the retreat. Heather said, you're amazing, Caroline. Oh, thank you. Natalie said, thank you. I don't say much, but I really get a lot out of the calls. Good. You know, there are a lot of people in the group, and there are just a small handful of people who are talking. So there must be a lot of people who are lurkers. So hello to the lurkers. I hope that it's helpful as a lurker. And thank you for being live, and thank you for watching the replay. And I will talk to you all very, very soon. Molly does not say goodbye. She's playing with her thing, and she can't be bothered.